Mr. Herbold here. Just thought it would be a good idea to kind of wrap up week number 4 for my GATE classes, periods 1, 4, and 6. So, this will be on School Loop. No, not School Loop. This will be on Google Classroom. But I'm just going to go over it real quick with you right now just to make sure we're all on the same page. You have an exam coming up, but I'll let you know more about that later. The first thing you talked about was the Dred Scott decision. And the Dred Scott decision was when a slave named Dred Scott was taken by his owner in the 1850s, and the owner took him to territory in the north that did not allow slavery. So on that basis, Dred Scott sued and went all the way to the Supreme Court. And Chief Justice Roger B. Taney ruled 3 things. 1, slaves are not citizens, so they shouldn't be suing in a court of law to begin with. 2, he declared that slaves are property, and property is protected by the Constitution, the Fifth Amendment. So he can do anything he wants with his property. And then the most damaging of all, number 3, was Chief Justice Roger B. Taney ruled that the Missouri Compromise back in 1820, which had declared slavery illegal in certain territories, was now illegal itself. So basically what that meant was slavery is now legal everywhere. Crazy. Okay, then we had the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Abraham Lincoln was running for a Senate seat against the incumbent, which means the guy that already has the job, Stephen A. Douglas, in the state of Illinois in 1858. So Lincoln challenged Douglas to a series of debates, kind of like controlled arguments, you know. And if Douglas doesn't accept the challenge, oh, he's a wimp, he's scared, I don't want to, you know. But he took the challenge, and during the debates, he said some things about popular sovereignty and slavery that made the voters kind of angry. So he did win the Senate seat. Lincoln lost that bid for the election and for the Senate seat. But when the presidential election came around 2 years later in 1860, the voters held what Douglas had said in those earlier debates against him. Lincoln wins. But it showed how fragmented the Union was becoming over the issue of slavery. And what Douglas said came to be known as the Freeport Doctrine. Then we had John Brown. John Brown was a staunch abolitionist who, remember, he was in on the murders of 5 people in Pottawatomie Creek, Kansas, during what they call Bleeding Kansas. He then went on to Harpers Ferry, Virginia, and his idea was he was going to raid the federal arsenal, take the weapons, and arm all the slaves and say, here, go shoot your master. Well, it didn't work. He was captured, he was tried, he was convicted, and he was sentenced to death. He was hanged by the neck until dead. But damage already done. Ripple effect all the way through the South. If there's one John Brown, there could be more. If it happened there, it could happen here. So people start freaking out. In the South, they started forming militias, and what you actually were seeing was the beginning of the Southern Confederate of States of America Army, all because of John Brown. Finally, the election of Abraham Lincoln. Last straw for the South. They said, if you elect that guy president, we're out of here. And he was elected, and they kept their promise. The first state to jump ship was South Carolina in December of 1860. They left. And then 10 more states would eventually follow them, and they would form the CSA, Confederate States of America. And then finally, the Confederate States of America Army, their military forces, fired upon Fort Sumter out in Charleston, South Carolina Harbor, and started the Civil War. So guess what? We're at war now. So that was basically what you had this week. We do have a test coming up. I'll put more on that later. But for now, that should do you. Okay? Thank you.